I'm writing this because everything I had lined up for college got flipped upside down on Sunday, June 16th. I'm supposed to be graduating this week, and my high school ceremony is coming up in just a few days. But then my church decided to announce they're holding their own graduation ceremony on July 7th. The plan is that during service, all the church graduates will walk down the sanctuary aisle, get recognized, and receive a prayer. The pastor made that announcement on the 16th, and according to my parents, he also said it was important for the next generation to ground their future in God. They even added a church-wide barbecue after service to celebrate the graduates. Here's the problem: I haven't set foot in church since I was 16, and that's because of something that happened back then, which I'll explain later. Still, my parents are suddenly determined not only to drag me to this church graduation but also to force me back into regular church attendance. And now, they're attaching new conditions to old agreements that never had strings before. Originally, my parents promised to split the cost of community college with me as long as I found a job this summer. My plan was to start there, then transfer later to get my bachelor's degree. But once the pastor made that announcement, my parents pulled a complete 180. They flat out told me they weren't going to my actual high school graduation, and they weren't letting me go either. We'd already invited out-of-state relatives for my graduation, but my parents told them to skip it and come to the church's version instead. I can't describe how blindsided I felt. It was like they yanked the rug out from under me. When I said I still intended to walk with my friends at my real graduation, my parents threatened to pull their offer to pay for college if I chose that over the church ceremony. They told me the pastor preached about how kids lose their way in college once they let go of faith and morals. According to them, they're not willing to fund me just to be changed by worldly influences. So I told them fine, I'd find a job and pay my own tuition, but I was still going to my graduation. That's when they hit me with another threat: if I didn't cave, they'd start charging me rent in July. And that's extra harsh because I don't even have a job yet, though I've been sending out applications like crazy and I already have a few interviews lined up. It's clear they're trying to use money to control me and push me back into church, and it's incredibly frustrating. They said they're doing this because they messed up during their own college years before finding God, and they don't want me making the same mistakes. The thing is, I have history with that church. I was bullied there, and 2 years ago I finally hit my breaking point. We had this youth camp on the church lawn, and one girl in my tent just wouldn't stop tormenting me. There were pranks that people brushed off as jokes, but the worst was when she made nasty comments about my body and weight while we were changing clothes. It really cut deep. I went to our tent chaperone afterward, but she shrugged it off because she wasn't inside while we were changing. This wasn't the only time that girl harassed me during youth group, but that night stuck with me the most. Surprisingly, back then my parents actually took my side. They agreed not to make me attend youth group anymore, and they pretty much let me step away from church. I keep wishing they could be that reasonable again. Most of my extended family are also churchgoers, and they've all decided to show up to the church graduation instead. It hurts knowing my own parents won't be at my real high school graduation, the one where I'd be standing alongside my actual friends. I don't have friends in that church group, so of course I want to graduate with the people I've gone to school with. But now I feel stuck because if I go, they'll pull their financial support, and I definitely can't afford rent right now. Another fear I have is that if I try to attend anyway, they'll retaliate. I keep imagining them taking my stuff and leaving it outside, or even locking me out completely. We don't have a lease, so technically they could. I've even started thinking about asking a friend's parents if I can crash with them if things get bad, and maybe even get legal advice just in case. But as much as I want that once-in-a-lifetime graduation, I might end up skipping it if it means keeping a roof over my head. I'm also being careful about who I talk to. I plan on reaching out only to relatives who aren't religious, because I don't want anything getting back to my parents. I can't even trust my older sister. She's moved out, but she still goes to church and pretty much echoes my parents' views on religion and politics. For clarity, the pastor never said the church graduation was supposed to replace anyone's high school one. It doesn't even fall on the same day, it's just happening on a Sunday service, with prayer and then a barbecue afterward. But my parents twisted it into this ultimatum: church graduation or nothing. Update: I couldn't write sooner because my parents took away my phone. I'll explain more about that later, but for now, I'll just say that some people suggested reaching out to my non-religious relatives for help, and honestly, that might end up being my only option if my parents try to force me out. After striking out with friends, I finally made my decision. I had told a few of them everything my parents had threatened, but none of them could help. Their parents either said it was too last minute or that they were already busy with their own kids' graduations and family plans. Next, I turned to my aunt and opened up about everything. She told me I could stay with her later in the summer, but not in time for my high school graduation since the notice was so short. She lives across the country, so she wasn't originally planning to come to my ceremony, but she promised she'd try to talk some sense into my parents. That conversation ended up blowing back on me. My parents found out I told her and lost it. They claimed it was none of her business and accused me of spreading family problems. I don't even know exactly what was said during that call, but when they came storming in, they threatened to shut off my phone plan unless I handed over my phone. They kept yelling until I finally caved. I gave them my phone, and when they demanded my laptop too, I handed that over as well. They even threatened to kick me out earlier than July just for telling my aunt. According to them, she might tell other people. They said if I dared to go to my high school graduation, they'd dump all my stuff outside that very night. That was the tipping point. Between that threat and something else I'll explain in a second, I decided not to attend my high school graduation. There was no way I could actually enjoy it while panicking the whole time about what would happen to my belongings or if I'd even have a home to come back to. The stress had already sucked the joy out of everything else, too. I lost motivation for sports, hanging out, even watching TV. I just couldn't see myself smiling through the whole ceremony knowing none of my family would be there. Honestly, I don't think I could have hidden my emotions either. So, I chose the path I've taken countless times before. I went along with what my parents wanted. I decided to just attend the church graduation and get it over with. In my head, I rationalized it the same way I had as a kid when they forced me into youth group, kids choir, and even baptism. This was no different, 5 minutes of standing on stage while the pastor said a prayer. Compared to 3 weeks of pre-baptism classes, this was nothing. They didn't even give us a gift like they do on Mother's Day, which made me laugh bitterly afterward. Some relatives showed up, slipped me cards with money, and then we all went to lunch at a restaurant. It reminded me of when my dad got elected to a church position years back. We had the same routine then. Honestly, I've gotten used to the song and dance over the years. This time it was shorter, easier, and less exhausting than a lot of the other church nonsense I've had to put up with. Once the church graduation was over, my parents returned my phone, and I noticed a lot of my anxiety lifted. But don't get me wrong, I'll never forgive them for forcing me into this. I've already made up my mind. I'm not taking their help for college anymore. I'll get a job, maybe even 2 part-time ones if I have to, and I'll work toward moving out this summer. After that, I don't plan to have anything to do with them. Skipping my real graduation was one of the hardest choices I've ever made, but I knew I wouldn't have enjoyed it under all that pressure. Choosing my mental health over a once-in-a-lifetime event hurt, but it was the only way to stay sane. My parents are satisfied now that I obeyed, and since they gave me my phone back, I can focus on finding work without them piling on more stress. They even dropped the rent threat for July, so things are calm for the moment. Still, I don't trust them. I know it's only a matter of time before they find something else to threaten me with. That's why I'm determined to move out as quickly as possible, even if it means crashing with my aunt for a while until I can get on my own 2 feet.